Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me here. Looking forward to sharing my life's work and what's happening day to day here at Up.Partners with your participants. A little bit of background on me. I'm a 30-year aviator, been flying airplanes, helicopters, jets, aerobatic airplanes, gliders, you name it, since I was 11 years old. I've been a 20-year entrepreneur, built several businesses in and around aerospace and aviation, and been investing for about the last 10 years. And at Up.Partners, we are an early stage venture capital firm that's investing what we call key enabling technologies that support a multidimensional future. And so what I'd like to do is take you on a bit of a journey to show you what's happening in the world of advanced air mobility, where this dream of flying cars and getting your toothpaste delivered to you via drone is not far away. In fact, in some places in the world, it's here today. So with that, I'd like to just start with a few slides to do tell you a bit about the story of what's going on in this super exciting new industry. So, if anybody that's listening to the call has ever owned a radio controlled helicopter, which I've owned many of them, you probably had an experience not too dissimilar than this gentleman. So the fact is, radio controlled helicopters are really, really hard to fly. And the fact also is that we've had drones for 50 years. They're called radio controlled helicopters. Now, they're very hard to fly, very expensive, very noisy, generally very messy because they're gas powered. And they were never more than just a niche toy. And then came this world of manual hardware, where drones became a thing starting roughly about 10 years ago. And the question is why? Why did they become a thing? And I'd offer to you that there's three drivers. One, battery life that was useful. Two, this concept of distributed electric propulsion, quadcopters. And three, software-driven control, where even a 4-year-old could fly one of these things. But I would offer that few people on this call, or even in the world, have had their lives meaningfully, positively affected by drones until you add the fourth layer. And that fourth layer is this age of AI driven autonomy, where now you can give these three-dimensional robots the ability to do things for you, provide you with insights, data, deliver things, and ultimately put us on a pathway where they can deliver us, where we can start to use flying cars using a lot of these same exponential technologies that have come together and created a convergence to help humanity go up. Now, over the last 4 years, my partners and I have held a summit called the Up Summit. And this has turned into the seminal gathering of investors, luminaries, technologies, corporates, this, that, and the other around the future of helping humanity go up. In 2018, we did it in partnership with the Walton family out of Bentonville, Arkansas, which they're the primary owners of Walmart. 2019, we did it with the Perot family out of Fort Worth. For those that don't know, Ross Perot Jr., he was the first guy to fly around the world in a helicopter, flies his own G650 jet, owns 26,000 acres north of Fort Worth, and created the Alliance Project, where 50 of the Fortune 500 companies are based. And in partnership with Ross in 2019, we did the Texas Up Summit, which is a little bit of CES meets Davos, meets the Oshkosh Air Show, meets Burning Man, meets TED, wrapped around this incredible bow that is the Perot Ranch. I'd like to just take a minute and show you a video of the event, because it's going to show you a lot of these cool technologies that we're talking about that are emblematic of what's going on in the world of advanced air mobility.
Revolution in aircraft, it's going to be here before we know it. And everybody being open-minded to helping launch this new industry, it's critical.
This is a fairly elite conference of bringing these people together to stimulate each other, not to compete with each other.
When you look at what's coming, we're going to improve the human race one more time and give people a much better life with these new flying products that are coming.
I see this as the opportunity that we saw back in the 1930s when aviation first started to come to life. I see the same thing happening now with unmanned systems or drones.
80% of the people living on this planet have never been up. Only 1 in 5 has been in some sort of flying machine.
We believe that billions of people around the world will benefit from flight one day.
So for the past year, we've been preparing for tonight. What's going to happen the next 48 hours is just magic.
We were the first carbon neutral airline in North America.
We're building the future of battery technology.
This is a visionary conference. We've got Cyrus and a great visionary in Ben. And they had a vision. And when you put us all in a room, it strengthens the vision, but also strengthens the determination to get this done and the optimism and the excitement.
I'm humbled beyond words to receive this award from a community that I respect more than any other community I've ever been a part of.
There's real genius involved in this.
What you're seeing here is 160 million years in the making.
Make it light, store a lot of energy, convert that energy efficiently, and make a slippery airplane.
Morgan Stanley is calling a $1.6 trillion market.
Air traffic control today is totally archaic. So this is what we need. We need to go digital and we need to go automated.
It's just so cool to see this kind of happening.
I've been in aviation for 57 years. And this conference solidified my belief in that we have the right people at the right time and the right technologies to make all of this happen. Perfect.
Flying cars, flying taxis, Jetsons. We are at a pivot point. Things are changing, I think, in an amazingly fast-paced way.
There are some serious game changers in this room. Every one of you is a game changer. The up event will go down in history as the beginning of the eVTOL era.
It is not in 20 years we provide solutions. People are using these vehicles now. If moms and dads could spend an hour more a day with their children, what does that mean to society? Think what it'll mean in terms of healthcare.
2019 is the first time that in different parts of the world, blood, transplantable organs are actually being delivered by electric drones.
It's a great privilege to be a part of it.
So that should give the audience here a sense of the event. And let me just tell you about what happened at that event. We had about 30 companies present over a 2.5-day period. We had 160 people there, including President Bush and 3 former FAA administrators, governors, $100 billion investable capital, $330 million was invested into the companies that presented by the attendees in the room over that 2.5-day period. And so it's created this ignition opportunity around this industry that's been quite exciting. At UP.Partners, what we like to do is invest in what we call key enabling technologies that support a multi-dimensional future. And for us, a multi-dimensional future really is 2 main axes: things on the ground to things in the sky, and moving people and moving goods. And as you can see here on the screen, there are a lot of shared key enablers. To us, key enablers are the equivalent of picks and shovels. Now, there's a term we like to use called chocolate covered broccoli. You put chocolate on broccoli so that kids will eat the broccoli and get the nutritious stuff underneath. Majority of the mass is the broccoli, but a little bit of it is chocolate on the top. To us, flying cars and drones, that's the chocolate. They're exciting, it's cool, it's sexy, it's transformative. We can all understand it. But the broccoli is all of the key enabling technologies that's around that. And that's really where we like to spend our time as investors. What's exciting about this world of advanced air mobility, that it's bringing companies that you wouldn't expect to have an aviation thesis to the table. I'll give you an example. BNSF, one of the largest railway companies in the US, was the first company in the US to get what's called BVLOS, Beyond Visual Line of Sight approval from the FAA to use drones to inspect their railways. They have 200 pilots today that are doing this. And this has all happened relatively quickly. And so what's exciting is we get to learn from other industries with much more diverse thought and bring things into the world of aviation. Let's talk about some of the market sizing here. Between Porsche Consulting, Booz Allen Hamilton, and Morgan Stanley, they collectively think this new market is between a $250 billion and $1.5 trillion new TAM to be experienced over the next 20 years. Now, put that in perspective, the global automotive industry is $2 trillion, but it took 120 years to get there. Even further comparison is look at the global helicopter industry. It's only $8 billion. Now, if we take that Morgan Stanley report of $1.5 trillion, which who knows if it's 1.5 or 500 or whatever, we all can agree generally from an industry perspective, it's going to be big and it's happening rather quickly. If you take the Morgan Stanley report and break it down into their main contributors of moving things, that's the blue, moving people, that's the orange, and the dollars generated from the vehicle sales themselves, you can see how this changes as a function of time. So we're effectively here, day zero. The next 10 years is expected to be 50 times larger than the global helicopter industry. Most of that revenue coming from moving things in the sky. The second 10 years is where 80% of the growth is expected. Most of it coming from moving people in the sky. The way we like to think about it is go back to the beginning of the aviation industry. The first industry that took off was the airmail industry. It was the airmail industry that proved out navigation routes, navigation technology, manufacturing technology, propulsion technology. Once we got to a level of safety and reliability, that's when people were comfortable to get on these things. And we created the commercial airline industry. We think the next 10 years is the equivalent of the airmail decade, and the following 10 years is the equivalent of the commercial airline decade. Now, if you look at venture investing broadly into new mobility, it's a relatively new thing. Of the $120 billion invested in new mobility from venture, $110 billion has come since 2015. Most of those dollars have gone into companies like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Didi, Tesla, this, that, and the other that we're all very familiar with. That little orange sliver you see at the top, that's advanced air mobility. That's the stuff we're talking about. Now you'll say, Cyrus, there's not a lot of money that's been deployed there. Why are you so excited about this? Well, I'd say you're right, up to the end of this chart. This chart was published in Q1 2019. From January 1 of 2020 to January 1 of 2021, 20x the dollars that were deployed in the year 2016 were deployed last year. From January 1 of 2021 to year to date, we've already eclipsed all of last year. So I'd offer to you that we reached a convergence, an inflection point, driven by 5 major contributors. 1, technological readiness. 2, regulatory readiness. 3, consumer demand. 4, investor readiness. And 5, governmental readiness. That has created a Cambrian explosion of companies in the space, creating hardware solutions, software solutions, services solutions. A few companies that we're directly involved with that are emblematic of what happens when you use these sorts of exponential technologies to solve problems that we never would have thought of would be problems that could be solved using flying machines. I'll start with a company called Zipline that we were very early investors in. Zipline is using drones to deliver blood in Africa today. 50% of the blood in Rwanda and Ghana today is being delivered via Zipline. Every 4 minutes, a drone is taking off. Number 1 request for blood, women giving birth that didn't have access to blood. You can have blood delivered anywhere in those 2 countries within a 1-hour iPhone request. One day alone, they did 26,000 kilometers of flying. This is a 3-year-old company that just recently closed a $3 billion valuation financing round. And they just also started deliveries with Walmart out of Bentonville, Arkansas. My partner, Adam Grosser, here at UP.Partners, is also the chairman of Google Wing. Google Wing is Google's drone delivery service for retailers. Last year, they did 100,000 delivery flights. This upcoming year, they'll do 500,000 delivery flights. They're operating in Scandinavia, Virginia, and Australia. Number 1 requested item by retailers or consumers, coffee. If you can give people their coffee in 3 to 4 minutes, not 34 minutes with DoorDash or Uber Eats, their behavior habits change to the tune of them using the service 4 to 5 times a day. In December of last year, they set a record. A customer requested a bottle of Advil from a Walgreens 4 miles away. From the time he got on his phone and put, yes, I want the product, to the time it was delivered in his backyard was 2 minutes and 48 seconds. The world is changing really, really, really rapidly as it relates to how things and people move. And what's interesting about Wing is that Wing is not Amazon. Amazon has publicly been very vocal that they are going to make this an option on your Amazon app in the not so distant future, where you simply say, deliver via drone, pay $5 extra and you have it within 5 minutes or whatever, relatively short period of time. Another company in the bottom right-hand side of the screen that's emblematic around some of the technological advancements that are coming as it relates to the sky is Skydio. What you're seeing here is a drone following a mountain biker. There is no pilot. Completely autonomous, locked onto a target, avoiding all the trees, the branches, the ground. The technology that's driving this is not any different than the technology that's driving autonomous cars. In fact, the NVIDIA autonomous car chip is the same chip that's driving the Skydio drone. Just before President Trump left office, he gave this company, Skydio, that we were early investors in, a giant fat wet kiss. And what he did was the largest drone manufacturer in the world, DJI, $20 billion company, a Chinese company, he blacklisted them, much like Huawei went through a similar situation in the United States. That has caused Skydio to now go from the number 2 player from a revenue perspective and sort of product perspective to the number 1 player, but they were already the number 1 player in the autonomy space. We think Skydio is equivalent of the Tesla of this entire industry. What has us very excited is that these technologies are being developed and tested and put into market in developing parts of the world that need it the most. So we just talked about Zipline up in Rwanda and Ghana. At the very bottom of the screen, you see a blue and black drone where they started their operations. This company called Valancy in South Africa, delivering time-critical components to mines and industrial applications. At the top left, you see some imagery of a drone that's doing pipeline survey. What's interesting and exciting about places like Africa is you have high humanitarian need, low regulatory boundaries to get over, and low social signature where you don't have people saying, not in my backyard. An example of another developing part of the world that's able to deploy this sort of technology is Quito, Ecuador. So what you're going to see here is a company called Aerial Loop that's launched out of Quito. They partner with Rappi. Rappi is the DoorDash of South America. You see, in Quito, you have a very dense population in the city center. And then just outside of that, it's very mountainous terrain, but you have a lot of people living in those mountainous communities that don't have the same access to food delivery and restaurants as those in the city center do. So what has Aerial Loop done? They partner with Rappi. You get on the app, you order food in these remote communities. A motorbike driver delivers the food to this drone here. The drone flies 7 minutes, what would otherwise be an hour and a half. Drive through the hills and up and over and this and the other, and it lands at another drone port, and another motorbike driver picks up the food and delivers it to the customer. Another company that we're proud investors into. And it's just not about delivering food. Another one of our portfolio companies is Ware. Ware is doing warehouse inventory management fully autonomously using the Skydio drone that I showed you earlier. What Skydio has done is created an SDK for developers to build products and services on top of their drone. These large 1 million square foot warehouses that you see all over the place, those warehouse owners will spend, in some cases, up to $1 million a year to have people walking up and down the aisles with a barcode scanner, with forklifts, with cherry pickers to do inventory counts regularly. With Ware, the drone autonomously flies up and down the aisles. It grabs all the imagery. When it lands, it sends the information to the cloud. Their software is able to analyze the barcodes and location of the bins and provide an analysis against the warehouse management software to tell the warehouse manager what's there versus what they think is there. So they can do this for 30% of the cost at 80% gross margins. As you can see, from delivering vaccines to your blood, to delivering mail, your coffee, the world is changing rapidly around moving things in the sky. In the bottom left-hand side of the screen is the drone delivery market map. You have drone service providers on the left-hand side and business internal services on the right-hand side. And every major industry has exposure here: retail, food, medical supplies, industrial applications. The bottom right-hand side of the screen, you're getting a subset of some of the 400 companies developing some sort of flying car. Now, one of the most important things that has happened in the United States history, or excuse me, the history of humanity, is the space race. If you go back to the 1960s, when President Kennedy said, we will go to the moon, in a geopolitical war between Russia and the United States. And the floodgates of capital from the government to support that was unleashed. There was no limit to which the government was going to spend. That investment we are benefiting from today. If President Kennedy did not say we're going to go to the moon and give the creative space for engineers to think about going to that sort of destination, we wouldn't have GPS today. We wouldn't have satellite radio today. We wouldn't have a lot of the core technology in our phones that's making them useful today. And so you can't even begin to articulate what the economic impact has been over the last 60 years since the advent of the space industry. But it all came from a geopolitical war between Russia and China. I'm sorry, Russia and the United States. We are in round 2 of a geopolitical war, and it's a race between China and the US in this space. So the US sees the advanced air mobility marketplace, this industry we're talking about, to be of significant existential economic importance to the United States from a national security perspective. What you're seeing here is a company called EHang. EHang is a Chinese company that's developed a fully autonomous electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle that's flying with real people today in China. They're operating. It's not when will it show up, it's here today in China. And these guys are doing some really, really interesting things. It's not just flying cars. How about a flying fire truck? Why send people up those ladders carrying the fire hose, put their lives at risk when you can have robots like the EHang with a nozzle to go out and put out a fire? These are some of the examples of how the world can change, and you can solve problems that you never thought would be possible when you can take advantage of the third dimension. EHang went public in December of 2018 at a $700 million valuation. The company's trading at close to a $5 billion valuation today. So you can see why the US government and Defense Department is very interested to ensure that we have an indigenous program or set of an indigenous industry that stays preeminent in the space. Just a few weeks ago, a company by the name of Archer landed a $3.3 billion SPAC public offering with a $1 billion order from United Airlines. This is a company that legitimately, there's nothing flying today. It's a concept, and the concept has resonated, and it's gotten investors from the private markets and the public markets excited to support them. There's a company called Beta Technologies, which we are early investors in, that has developed a product that is incredible. The Alia 250 is the largest and the furthest flying of electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles you'll see today. They've already done a couple hundred flights, just closed a very, very large private round, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see this company go public in the not so distant future. A company that's gotten a lot of attention is Joby. Joby is based up in the Santa Cruz area. They just had a $6.6 billion public offering with Reid Hoffman SPAC taking them public. And these guys are just crushing it. Super cool design. It's relatively smaller than the Alia 250, but it's particularly quiet, which makes it very unique and useful in urban environments. It's a company in Israel called Urban Aeronautics, which has a very unique design where a blown fan in the center and pushers in the back, and a platform that's not too dissimilar from a car. Their initial customer was the Israeli Defense Forces. A company up in Boston called Alakai, and this is the Sky product, where it's using a multi-copter design, but it's being powered by hydrogen. And that makes this particular design relatively unique. And this concept of hydrogen as a storage of energy is becoming a major trend in aerospace. I wouldn't be surprised that within the next few years, we have, particularly with the EU leading, a zero emissions mandate by 2030, 2035 for new airliners built. And these guys, a company called Zero Avia, has actually figured out a way to do it. They actually have flying airplanes today with hydrogen as their primary power source, where the only emission is water. There's a company in Vancouver called Harbor Air. Harbor Air is the largest seaplane operator in North America. What you're seeing here is a fully electric aircraft. They converted a turbine Beaver, took off that kerosene burning PT6 Pratt & Whitney engine off the front and stuck the Magnix motor on the front of it. And you can see that it's flying today with zero emissions. Most people know Airbus as an airliner company. Well, beyond just creating airliners, they're also one of the largest helicopter manufacturers in the world. They have two incredible strategies. This is one of them. This is the City Airbus. Their competitor, Boeing, up in Seattle, they have two strategies. This is their PAV, personal air vehicle, and then also Whisk. Whisk is a company that was originally founded by Larry Page. What Whisk is doing is fully autonomous air taxi. There will be no pilots involved in these things. They're operating today and testing in New Zealand, where they have a regulator that's very open-minded to allow them to go out and test, where you have some of the less amount of stringent requirements as you would here in the United States. Larry Page has another company, the co-founder of Google, called Opener, and this is their Blackfly product. This is not computer-generated imagery. This is all real. This vehicle may be my favorite, and I'll tell you why it's my favorite. It's being certified under what's called the ultralight category, so it does not require pilot certification, and it doesn't require aircraft vehicle certification. This thing would go 0 to 120 in 2.1 seconds, will fly about 60, 70 miles, and you can learn to fly it in about an hour. They're not looking to build tens of these a year or hundreds of these a year or thousands. They're looking to build tens of thousands of these a year. So let your mind wander about the different applications for something like this. Another company in Germany called Lillium. Lillium has got a very sleek, sexy design with an articulating trailing edge blown wing. They also are going public as we speak. And it's not just about moving people and delivering packages. It's also delivering payloads like crop dusting. If you think about crop dusting, it's super necessary and it's super dangerous. A lot of pilots die every year running into power lines and trees doing this sort of tech. Now you can do it fully electric, fully autonomous by a company by the name of Pika. Another European company is Volocopter. Volocopter is using a pretty traditional, simple multi-copter design, relatively short distance range. My expectation is they perhaps will be likely the first company to be certified and start to be able to deliver these products to customers. Another company in Austin, Texas called Lyft Aircraft is using a similar sort of design, but they're going after a different market. Many of us may have grown up going to the go-kart track or driving around these little go-karts. Next generation of children will go up going to the flying car track. You get into one of these machines at a Lyft Aircraft flying car track. They have three options: fully autonomous, semi-autonomous, and Top Gun. You get in, you pay $100, you get a 15-minute flight, you land, and you too can be a pilot. The last company I'll talk about is Hyundai. Hyundai last year made an incredible statement. Their chairman, if I'm not mistaken, said it, that they expect by the year 2030 that 30% of Hyundai's revenue is going to come from things related to the sky. That's 9 years away. If you think about the supply chain, you think about the entire industry that needs to be prepared and ready to take this on, and what a vote of confidence for this industry is for a company that has a Hyundai to make this sort of commitment, it's really quite staggering. So we think they are going to really be a company that's going to support the advancements of this industry. I've shared with you a lot of stuff here today about the future of moving people and goods in a multidimensional way. If you have any questions about this presentation or the work we're doing at UP.Partners as investors in this space, feel free to email me at cyrus@up.partners, or feel free to drop me a text or call me on my mobile on the number you see on the screen. And with that, I'm super grateful for the folks here to allow me to share what it is I do day to day, and happy to take any questions that there might be.
Thanks, Cyrus. Yeah, really interesting subject. And we do have a question that's come in. It says, do these new technologies present safety risks? And how do you address that and possible regulation?
Yeah, so let's start with the manned vehicles. Any of these manned vehicles to get in the hands of customers, for the most part, have to go through an exceptionally difficult FAA regulation process. Billions of dollars being spent to go through a regulative process. So that significantly reduces the risk to people. But the fact is, these things will crash, things will happen. And no different than when we get into a car and go drive, we see car accidents every day. And so there has to be a certain level of accepted risk tolerance for humanity to go forward to explore these sorts of things. But I think the industry at large is taking a very safety first approach and working very closely with regulators to build safety systems and regulations to ensure that this is a net positive for humanity.
Perfect.